Tovrik Sen had run 211 trials in his career, and every single one of them had ended the way trials were supposed to end. A candidate took somewhere between 40 and 70 tools, walked out the south door, and came back 30 days later either triumphant or, occasionally, in a recovery pod. That was the job. That was the rhythm. He liked the rhythm. So when the human girl walked into Chamber 4, looked at a table holding the finest survival equipment 9 allied species had spent centuries perfecting, picked up exactly one folding knife, and walked toward the exit before he'd finished writing her name on the intake form, something in Tovrik's carefully ordered universe made a sound like a dropped glass. "Wait," he said, which was not a word examiners were supposed to say. The girl, Dara Kessen, didn't wait. The door closed. Tovrik looked down at the form. Under tools selected, he had written the number 1, and then sat staring at it the way a man stares at a phone number he's certain he's misdialed, hoping the digits might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. The trial itself was simple in the way that very old, very important things tend to be simple. One candidate, 100 tools laid out by the Sentinel Array's finest engineers, 30 days alone on an unforgiving world, and a single binary outcome. A species either proved it belonged among the Array's recognized civilizations or it didn't. 8,000 cycles of data said the safe range was 40 to 70 tools. Nobody had ever taken one. Beside Tovrik in the observation gallery sat HFY, a quiet, watchful Velkun analyst who had a habit of noticing things a full beat before anyone else in the room did. "She wasn't deciding," Yeshi said, replaying the feed. "Look at her eyes. She already knew before she walked in." Tovrik wanted to dismiss that, mostly because admitting Yesha was right meant admitting his 211 trials of careful precedent were about to mean nothing at all. What the feed showed, on slow replay, was stranger than either of them expected. Dara hadn't ignored the table. She'd walked its length the way someone walks a museum they already know the layout of, unhurried, unimpressed, occasionally curious. She picked up a stone, an ordinary fist-sized rock that had been included almost as an afterthought among the trial's 100 curated items, turned it over once, and set it back down with something that looked almost like respect. Then she picked up the knife, plain, unremarkable, item 71 of 100, and never looked at the table again. Ashveil received her with a cold that the Array's instruments rated as survivable with appropriate insulation, which Dara did not have. The observation feed showed her first reaction to the planet's brutal night chill. Not panic, not scrambling for shelter, but a single short laugh, quiet and almost fond, as if the cold were a joke she'd been told before and still found funny. Within hours, she wasn't wandering. She was reading the land's slope and color like a sentence she already half understood, and by the second day, she'd found water not through searching, but through noticing where the ground simply behaved differently than everywhere else. The thing that worried Tovrik more than the cold was the Krell Wyrm, an apex predator no candidate had ever filmed clearly because no candidate who encountered it had lived long enough to hold a camera steady. 8,000 cycles of footage showed only motion blur and screaming. By day 3, Dara had figured out something the Array's own xenobiologists hadn't. The worm didn't hunt by sight or scent, it hunted by vibration. Every previous candidate's mistake had simply been walking like a person walks. Dara stopped doing that. For 4 days she moved like something that had already decided stillness was the only currency worth spending. Tovrik assumed, watching her sit motionless for hours at a time, that she was failing, freezing up, breaking down. HFY disagreed. "She's not conserving energy," she said. "She's learning its rhythm. She's thinking in its language before it ever finds her." It found her anyway on the 11th night, close enough that the observation deck's collective breath caught as one. Dara didn't run. She didn't swing the knife at 400 kilograms of vibration-sensing muscle, which would have been suicide and which every instinct in the room expected anyway. Instead, in the dark, she used the knife for exactly 4 seconds, cutting one taut vine she'd identified 2 days earlier, and a dead tree limb dropped from above directly onto the worm's skull before it ever completed its strike. The thing that had killed candidates for 8,000 cycles never even registered her as the threat. The forest did the work. She had simply pointed it. She didn't fight the planet, yes, she said into the stunned silence of the gallery. She spent 30 days learning its rules well enough to make it defeat itself. Across the room, a third voice spoke for the first time in hours. Hask Dorn, the Array's quiet military liaison, who had said almost nothing since arriving, and now said the one thing that made the room colder than Ashveil's worst night. "What worries me isn't the trap," he said. "It's that she was never desperate. Every species we've ever tested, you can predict by their fear. She gave us nothing to predict." Back on Ashveil, Dara sat beside the fallen worm in the dark, completely still, knife resting across her knee. She did not celebrate. She did not even breathe hard. She just looked at the animal for a long moment, something in her expression closer to acknowledgement than triumph. The look of someone who had expected a hard thing, done it, and was already thinking about tomorrow. Then she sharpened the knife on a flat rock, slow and methodical, the way you maintain something you intend to keep using. The observation feed caught every second of it. Nobody on the gallery spoke. There was nothing left to say that the feed was not already saying better. On extraction day, Tovrik finally asked her the question he'd been circling for 30 days. Why the knife, out of 100 better options? Dara's answer arrived without hesitation, the same calm she'd carried since Chamber 4. "Everything else on that table was something you'd lean on," she said. "A tool that does the thinking for you. The knife doesn't. You still have to notice the vine, the slope, the silence. It just lets you act, once you have. I didn't think the test was about what I could carry. I think it was about whether I'd still be paying attention once I had it." Tovrik said nothing for a long moment, because somewhere in that answer, 211 trials worth of certainty quietly finished falling apart. The Sentinel Array did not create a threat classification. They created a question added quietly to every future intake form, one that outlived the headlines and the council debates and Tovrik's own tidy career. What is the minimum a being needs before competence stops being about equipment and starts being about attention? Hask Dorn's report on Dara Kessen never reached the council at all. It went instead to a different desk, in a different building, stamped with 3 words that meant the scientists weren't the only ones paying attention anymore. So here's the question worth sitting with. If you only got to bring one thing into the unknown, would you trust your gear or your attention?